Perfect. Looks good.
Okay, great.
Perfect. Looks good.
Okay, great.
Ben, are you in City Council chambers, or did you just use that as your screen?
That's just my background screen.
We should probably all do that and pretend we're there in person.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ben, are you in City Council chambers, or did you just use that as your screen?
That's just my background screen.
We should probably all do that and pretend we're there in person.
Okay, sorry about all that. You ready? You hear me? Okay. Okay, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the June 10th, 2020 virtual meeting of the Design Review Committee. There are a few things to start out with for the good of the order. Everyone from the public entering this hearing has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. We will ask that you have slides to share, or if you can use the planner slides for your visuals. If you have your own slides, you will be promoted to a panelist. This may log you off for a moment and log you back in, and then you'll have the capabilities to share your screen. A quick overview for Zoom. The capabilities and options are different depending on which device you're using. If you're on a smartphone, you'll be limited to only speaking and sharing your camera. If you're on a computer, you can share your webcam or your screen when called upon. Some laptops might not have the microphone capabilities. If you wish to speak over the phone but watch on your computer, the phone number for this hearing is listed on the email you received when registering for tonight's hearing. For both smartphone and computer participation, there are controls on the bottom of Zoom to virtually raise your hand when you wish to speak on the item you're interested in. If you're attending on the phone with no visual capabilities, you can raise your hand virtually by typing *9. Again, that's *9 to raise your hand virtually on a phone. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arrived. If the chat function isn't available to you, you can email zoninginfo, one word, at cityofboise.org with any technical issues. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we will proceed to public testimony, starting with those who signed up on the electronic sign-up sheet in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We will provide a 30-second warning and then stop you at 3 minutes. We are strict in this time as it is limited in code. The applicant is allowed 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Tonight's agenda and proceedings will be almost the same as in-person hearings, except we might have a bit of delay as we deal with this new technology. Please be courteous and patient with us while we venture through this virtual format. And with that, Mr. Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Josh. At this time, I'd like to call the June 10th, 2020 Design Review Committee meeting to order. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council. We make final decisions on design review permits. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important to give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means if the applicant agrees with the staff report and there is no public opposition, this item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comments. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order on the agenda with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for virtually attending tonight. And with that, Josh, will you please call the roll?
Simple.
Here.
Zabala. Rudine.
Here.
Marsh.
Here.
Zuckerman.
Here.
Talboy.
Here.
That is 5 present, committee member Aguilar and Zabala absent, although it looks like committee member Zabala just joined us. Tom, are you there? Oh, we'll give him a few minutes. Go ahead and move on, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Josh. At this time, I would take a motion for the May 13, 2020 minutes.
I move to approve the May 2020 minutes.
So moved. Is there a second?
Second.
And seconded. Josh, will you please call the roll?
Simple.
Aye.
Rudine.
Aye.
Marsh.
Aye.
Zuckerman.
Aye.
Talboy.
I abstain as I was not present at the last meeting.
Okay. Motion carries 4-0 with 1 abstaining.
We have one item up for the consent agenda tonight to be considered on tonight's consent agenda. The first item to be considered for tonight's consent agenda is item number 2. Is DRH 20-00120. The location is 1347 North Maple Grove Avenue, or Maple Grove Road. It's to construct an approximately 33,340 square foot auto dealership and associated site improvements in a C4D zone. Is the applicant present? If you would, please virtually raise your hand. Let the record show that the applicant is present. I see a virtually raised hand. Are you in agreement with the recommended conditions of the staff report? Please virtually raise your hand. Again, I see a virtually raised hand. And then, is there anyone present wishing to testify in opposition to this item? Please virtually raise your hand. I see no raised hands, so this item will be moved to the consent agenda, and that concludes our items to be considered for tonight's consent agenda. So at this time, I would take a motion on the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move that we accept the items on the consent agenda.
Second.
So moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Josh, will you please call the roll?
Simple.
Aye.
Rudine.
Aye.
Marsh.
Aye.
Zuckerman.
Aye.
Talboy.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
So our next item is item number 1. So before us tonight, we have item number 1, DRH 20-00099. The location is 9000 West State Street. It's to construct a multifamily residential project with 60 units in 9 buildings, a clubhouse, and associated site improvements on a property in a pending R3D zone.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. Can you all see me or see my screen and hear me okay?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, so the subject property is approximately 4.3 acres located on the north side of State Street, west of Bogart Lane. So here's the subject property there. So we have a mix of uses in the area, including office, commercial, multifamily, single family, and on a variety of different lot sizes. This project was previously approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission through PUD. And last night, the city council heard the rezone and they voted to approve the rezone as well. The applicant is in agreement with all the recommended conditions in the staff report. I believe we do have the Northwest Neighborhood Association and possibly some other residents present who would like to discuss the project. I did send you a memo this morning. Hopefully you all had a chance to look at that briefly. But that included the Northwest Neighborhood Association's presentation to City Council last night. And they sent me an email this afternoon as well. And it sounds like their main concerns are how children from this development are going to safely walk to school. There is a nearby elementary school. And then how school buses are going to load and do unloading on the site. And both those issues did come up at City Council last night. They did point out a route to the nearest elementary school that involved pathways and sidewalks within a mile that they felt was sufficient, but maybe not ideal. And I think the applicant also discussed a possible bus loading area on the site. So the applicant is present and might be able to look at that further. But again, the overall layout of this project was approved by planning and zoning. So again, we're really looking at the design, which I haven't heard any concerns about. And then I guess internal pathways, they are including sidewalks internal to the development, and they are providing a pathway with an easement along the west of the site for potential future connection to the north. And I guess I will move over to the applicant then to go over any aspects of the project they want to discuss with you.
Thanks, Keelan. So at this time, is the applicant present? Yes. So at this time, we will hear from the applicant. And if you would you please state your name and address for the record? You have 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to come before you tonight. My name is Jay Gibbons. I represent South Beck and Baird here in Boise, 2002 South Vista, and I am the applicant's representative for the project. I do have some information and some graphics, a presentation, if I could share my screen.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Gibbons, I will promote you to a panelist, so you will be dropped from the call for just a second, but hang tight.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Gibbons, you should be able to share your screen with the button on the bottom of the screen.
Can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you again. So I represent the State Street 60 apartments, 4.3 acres, located across from Arnie Lane. Garden City is on the south side of State Street, Boise on the north. The application, as Caitlin pointed out, this property was previously annexed into the city in 2014. It was approved February 10th by the P&Z Commission, and then last night the City Council approved the rezone. We have 60 townhouse apartments. We have over 32% of open space, and we've got we show pedestrian connections that are adjacent to. We have irrigation infrastructure that fronts the property on State Street. On the west property line between us and Duncan subdivision, we also have a drainage ditch that runs the northeast property line and across the north property line and it flows to the west under the jurisdiction of Drainage District number 2. So we have 60 units in 9 buildings. There are 3 8-unit buildings, and the rest are 6-unit buildings. They are townhouse style apartments, meaning that the bedrooms, 2 and 3 bedroom apartments on the second floor has the bedrooms. The first floor is a living space, kitchen area. Each unit opens up into common open space, and the ones along the north, we have worked with the drainage district number 2. They want their existing open drain ditch tiled, and we've committed to do that. And in an effort also to provide them access to and along the new piped waterway, there will be a 16-foot wide compacted gravel access road / public pedestrian pathway. There's also the live irrigation ditch on the west property line that flows out of the canal along State Street. It flows to the north. It's open along the length of our property, 356 feet, at which time then it goes into a tile to the north. And I'm not sure to the extent that it has been tiled to the north, but and we met with the irrigation ditch company early on. They expressed the desire to tile that ditch because it's tiled north outside of our property, and they would like to reduce our maintenance, as well as the city's request to provide a pedestrian pathway to the north that would allow us to, they would take a lesser easement in width and allow us room to actually put a pathway to the north, and we're willing to do that. That's not a problem. The question that has come up in the neighborhood association they gave a presentation. They've been involved in the project all along and testified, had a presentation at planning and zoning, as well as last night at city council. The school district has submitted comments on the application from Transmittal. They didn't get comments into us during the PUD and the rezone, but they submitted them for the DR. And so they had 2 comments, which typically they will submit a form letter. We have, and this is since they requested that we address and look at an opportunity to get a school bus off of State Street so that they don't have to stop on State Street in a lane of traffic and let kids off. Our entry that aligns with Arnie Lane is, it's 3 lanes wide. So we have space along the entry road. We can certainly address that and provide a bus stop. And our circulation route is a loop back to State Street through the development, so they can certainly get the school bus turned around. And the other comment that the school district had was regarding safe routes to school and providing an adequate access to get kids out of our property or beyond our property, through our property, to be able to get to a school. Duncan Lane has a sidewalk, a public sidewalk on the back side of the canal in their common area that dead ends at our property line on the west. And our plan is, of course, to extend that pathway sidewalk across our State Street frontage. And we have sidewalks connecting off of that main pedestrian way to the north on both ends, internal to the site, through the site between buildings. They're all very interconnected. So, we feel really comfortable about our pedestrian and bicycle access from that standpoint. We have no issue with the comments from the school district, and I'm pretty sure he'll hear more about that later. But we're here to talk about, massing, building colors, building materials, and landscape treatment. And so we've provided, we hired a graphic artist to create some interesting, some typical elevations from different points within the property. This first set. They're labeled. There's a key map in the corner that shows where, what direction and where on the site this particular elevation exists. And it's a plethora of, we've got buildings that come in view between them, which is pedestrian access. We have bicycle parking covered and open. As you can see, we have a lot of landscape trees in all the islands. It meets city code. We have a clubhouse that has an internal workout room, a rental office, as well as public, the resident open space. It has a fireplace, gathering area inside. We also have an area outside off the patio that's covered, and there will be barbecues in this area and other things for use by the residents. We have, like I said, there's bicycle parking everywhere. And I believe that I have our representative, our project manager from our architect, Lancey Rockwell and Associates. I believe he's available for any questions you might have building wise. You will note in your packet that the wood post and beam at the entries on the very top of the sheet, and what was submitted to you was a wrapped product. It was a faux beam, just wrapped. It looked like wood. We have since changed that. That is actually a wood post and beam, real wood. So you can see we have modulation. We have a variety of colors, textures, stucco, sideboard, everything. So, we really tried to have an upscale product. And I'll stand for any questions at this point. And like I said, our architectural representative is here, I believe, as well. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions for the staff or the applicant from the committee at this point? Hearing none, thank you very much. So at this time, is there a representative from the Neighborhood Association? If you would, please virtually raise your hand. I believe you're, and you see a hand raised. Please state your name and address for the record, and you have 20 minutes.
My name is Erica Schofield, 7363 West Limelight Court, Boise, Idaho, 83714. I am on the board of the Northwest Neighborhood Association, and I do have some slides. So if I could do the connection, please.
Ms. Schofield, just 1 second. I will promote you to a panelist.
Yes. Okay, I'm getting faster and faster at this every time. Okay, first of all, I really want to emphasize that our neighborhood association is not opposing the development along State Street. We're actually not even opposing really hardly any elements of this particular project of its build. I think that's really important that you know that. What we have been advocating for is to ensure that public safety is of the highest priority when the city makes these decisions. And in particular, I have real interest in this because I spent most of my childhood dinners listening to both my parents, the superintendent of school transportation, and my mother, who designed the bus routes, talk about what happens when each time a development comes and how it changes the way the buses maneuver, how it adds time to the structure, the safety issues involved, and so forth. So I come from a perspective that most people probably don't have, and having heard this over and over and over again. We did submit some late comments today, and I want to say that because of this situation with the whole COVID and the city not being able to do business as usual, it's been very challenging for neighborhood associations to keep track of which documents and applications are on the docket and when, to learn the virtual hearing platform, and to simply focus on these neighborhood projects when we've had this pandemic. And I in particular have had 4 different family members who are either working in this situation or have had this situation impact their health. So it's stressful these days. With that being said, one of the most important things tonight is that this letter, which let me jump to it, from the school district was not in the Planning and Zoning Commission's packet or the record. It was not in the City Council's packet or the record. Therefore, it was not included in the staff project reports that are prepared for these hearings, and those are heavily relied on for decision making. That's a critical issue because Idaho law, and I'm going to have to jump back and forth between these slides, Idaho law says that particular consideration should be given to the effects of any proposed zone change upon the delivery of services by any political subdivision providing services, including school districts. And also it talks about how it is supposed to be referred to the districts within the Boise Code, or the agencies, I mean. And then the Idaho law goes on in the beginning to say the purpose is for school districts to participate not only in the planning process, but in the development process and in an ongoing basis, and that the school facilities and transportation are to be analyzed and considered with future development. So if you look at a bird's eye view of what we're looking at, we already have a lot of public safety infrastructure issues, which I know you are not to be discussing tonight, but I think it's good for you to see that we have lots of missing sidewalk already for kids to safely walk to school. Therefore, the alternative, and the school district has to offer this, is the bus service, because they're not going to want to put these children at risk to walk down State Street, which is here, turn the corner, get a little bit of sidewalk, walk down Bogart Lane, and the elementary school would be about right here. And what that looks like when you're walking down Bogart Lane is this. There are no sidewalks, there's no designated bike lanes, there's a lack of street lighting, and that won't be in place until development occurs. And during the fall, when the daylight hours are short and you have heavy traffic along here, that's a perilous situation. And then we also have the fact that there's one access for fire. So we've got an additional safety issue piled on top of this, and there's no other way to get into this area. So we have lots of safety issues, but the one that you can consider tonight is the school district. Like I said, this was not part of the approval process for the Planning and Zoning Commission or City Council. It wasn't part of the record, and technically that's probably not following procedure. So tonight, I left a voicemail this morning for Lynette Dawes, the supervisor of transportation, and I understand I didn't expect her to call me back right away. She's probably working from home as well. These are the questions that I would ask her, and these are the things that I would like you to think about tonight in terms of addressing this safety issue. Within the state of Idaho, and along with any contractual obligations for the provision of school transportation, is a school bus even allowed to leave the public streets and enter private property to load and unload students? Is a school bus legally allowed to stop and load students on a state highway with a posted 50-mile-per-hour speed limit? And if any other alternatives are even possible, such as obtaining a legal easement on an adjacent parcel, is this required in order to approve a project so to ensure the safety and protection of the school children? This is what it looks like on that road. If you are to be, if you're stopping on State Street to pick up the children, which is what the school district letter says, although they want to pull out to do it. So let me play this video. It's brief. So again, it's not absolutely clear that the school bus can actually enter onto this site to pick up these children. That's not what this letter says. They're asking for a pullout. And so we cannot just assume that the bus can enter this property. What I would have heard at the dinner table if this was my family is that the bus is going to have a hard time slowing down in 50-mile-per-hour traffic. That takes time. You can't whip a 90-degree corner to turn into the parking area, pick up the children, come back out, and just gun it and get back on State Street with 50-plus-mile-per-hour traffic. And believe me, they don't go 50 on that section. They probably go 60 on a regular basis. So it's a perilous situation, and it deserves real close particular consideration, because multifamily projects along State Street have not been very common, and they're certainly not with one access point only. I believe that is everything I wanted to cover. I thank you for your time and listening. I stand for questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there questions for the Neighborhood Association from the committee at this time? Yes, committee member Zuckerman.
Thank you. So from what I understand, well, let me rephrase that. Is the neighborhood associations only concern the school bus?
Safely picking up children. So if they cannot enter this property, we don't know if that's allowed, and they have to be picked up on State Street. The school district letter requested a pullout, but this is ITD's section. It's a highway.
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry, I just meant was, aside from the safety concerns, was the neighborhood association okay with every other aspect of the proposal? I fully understand the safety concerns.
Okay.
Don't
for the things such as site design and massing and building and things like that. Yes, although it did dawn on me as I was reviewing this stuff again to just now, that there is no place for young children to play on this site, and then they're forced to go back down to the park and the school, and there's no safe way to get there. So I think the amenities are good amenities, but for children, it really leaves them with nothing to do.
Other questions or for the neighborhood association? Seeing none, thank you very much. At this time, we would open it up to a sign-in sheet. Anybody on a sign-up sheet at all to testify tonight? Josh?
Mr. Chairman, it was only the applicant.
Thank you very much. Are there any members of public testifying tonight that wish to testify in opposition to this or in general to this? Please virtually raise your hand.
I promoted Mr. Llewellyn, so he should be rejoining us here briefly.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, and if you would,
Great,
please
thank you.
state your
Okay.
name and address for the record, if you would.
Richard Llewellyn, 9170 Hill Road. So a lot gets lost in the 3-minute testimonies that we can give. I'm happy to hear more about the exterior, and I do think that the applicant is making a good product. I like the wood. Our neighborhood really likes that. We like natural materials. I think the stucco fits in well. So that's all positive, and we shouldn't lose track of that. I am intimately familiar with the property. That irrigation lateral number 34 used to be the traditional walking route for kids from the north side going down to that property. I had friends there as a kid. We used to play along, well, in that whole area. It's unfortunate that the ditch company, Boise Valley Irrigation Ditch Company, claims they have a 50-foot easement along there. There is no written easement. They do claim a 50-foot easement on the Boise Valley Canal along State Street. The reason this is a problem, they only actually use a 15-foot easement there, is that they can kind of strong arm property owners and developers. And it's something that the design review committee should be aware of in terms of how you can approve developments. By burying this irrigation lateral, we are losing a real chance to keep some flowing water, which is part of the State Street corridor plan, keep canals daylighted, losing pollinator habitat, losing songbird habitat. So that's unfortunate. I don't know if there's anything you can do about that or not now, but by reference, the Farmers Union now, which carries 100 times more water, purchased a 50-foot easement through our family property back in the 1890s. So it's just unreasonable to expect they would have a 50-foot easement on that small lateral. Other than that, I would also emphasize the importance, if you can find a way of maintaining some of the natural habitat along the drain ditch that also is, and the lateral, even if you're going to bury the lateral, that is a natural wildlife kind of landscape corridor. At this point, it used to be for deer and larger animals. At this point, it's probably more for songbirds and pollinators, but still critical. And these are really important elements for our neighborhood. We expressed this in our neighborhood plan that we ratified in February 20th, 2020, but it hasn't made it through the process yet because of the pandemic. But again, we appreciate the movement towards more natural materials and hope that can be carried through in the landscaping and the external landscaping along those easements as much as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your testimony tonight. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? If you would, please virtually raise your hand. Give it another minute here. All right, seeing no hands raised, I would turn it over back to the applicant for an opportunity for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Don't have a whole lot to say per se. I just want you to know that actually the school district letter was entered into the record last night. There were two letters that came differing from. One was the school district that we didn't have before, and it was just submitted from them for DR. And there was also a letter from the Boise Valley Irrigation Ditch Company that differed from the original comments that they made in December for the PD and the rezone. I sent that to city staff so that it could be included in the record last night. So it was part of the discussion. We too are concerned with our residents' safety in the long run, and we certainly pledge that we will be working with the school district going forward to make sure that I think that we can accurately address their comments as it is. If not, we're going to work until if the law says different, then we'll make arrangements for that. But it's one of those agencies that we're concerned with satisfying their needs as well as best we can on our acreage. I appreciate Richard's comments as far as the development itself, and certainly we will be going forward with whatever happens to the ditch on the west. As we pointed out, it's tight. If we leave it open, Boise Valley Irrigation Ditch Company has been adamant that we can't put a pathway inside their easement, and we'll work with them to define that easement regardless of whether what it ends up being 10 feet, 15 feet, or whatever. Our buildings are set back from the 25-foot easement that they asserted prescriptively in the beginning. So we're safe there regardless. If we can negotiate additional room, we'll certainly take care of that. If we have to close it, we have that covered. If we leave it open, we'll figure out what we can do there as well. We want to be good neighbors. We want a good product. We want to provide for, we had a discussion at the neighborhood meeting and several throughout the process with the neighborhood association about including pollinators and what have you in our landscape plan. So that's not out of the question. And we'll go to construction documents after this and finalize everything we promised everybody. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Questions for the applicants from the committee? Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
Oh. Yes.
Who are you calling on, me, Jim?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Dave.
Okay. It sounds like, from what I'm hearing, that things are pretty well in concert here. We've got Mr. Gibbons is suggesting that they're pretty amenable to trying to find a solution that will work for the bus, and the neighborhood association desperately wants that. So my question to you, Mr. Gibbons, is if we do put a condition of approval that asks you to come back to the design review staff and demonstrate that you've met an acceptable criteria from ITD and the school district, would that be something you would be able to live with?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Rudin, certainly. We have no issue with the conditions and the findings of fact as they're written at the standpoint. And if you put additional conditions such as that, certainly, yeah, no problem at all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Simple.
that was my almost exact question also. So I don't have any further questions. I think that it looks like a great project. I think that just addressing those concerns of the neighborhood and it sounds like they're willing to do that. So I'm pretty happy with it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simple. Other questions for the applicant at this time from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Cabo.
Yeah, and it's really just kind of in follow-up to Member Rudin's questions concerning with the conditions with ITD and the school district. And along those lines, it caught me when the discussion was had about whether, and I don't know if the applicant can answer this or not, and it may be for something that they work out down the road. But I would be very concerned putting children on a bus, trying to get in and out of that with people going that speed. Unfortunately, it is what it is, and we need to work around that. But do you know, Mr. Gibbons, whether or has there been any inquiry as to access of a bus actually into your development? Or is that something that has not been addressed until you heard that tonight?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Tallboy, it isn't news because we got the comments from the school district weeks ago. And so what came out last night as far as that was concerned also is there were 2 city council members that measured on the map in the background that, would basically from our front door to the school is 1.1 miles, which I know that the school district has regulations as far as how they set up bus routes, and if there are some places that they pick up kids because it's a busy area versus, even though they're only a little over a mile away from the school, they'll bus them to school for safety purposes, especially if they have to cross busy streets or what have you. In this instance, I can't answer to what the school district policies are, but I pledge to find out what those are and what they need. I don't think that, considering that the 2 routes that the school bus would come from, because the school is to the north of us, basically, if they come out Bogart, that's like 1,700 feet from our access drive. They're not going to hit 50 miles an hour anyways. But that's neither here nor there. It's we pledge to make sure that we can address the busing in the school comments that came out. We've known about them and we'll continue to work with them. So.
Okay. Well, thank you. And that's fair enough. I mean, it's the willingness to work through that issue, which I think is significant. So I appreciate your response and the fact that you're going to continue to work in that regard.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Simple.
I did think of one more thing I just wanted to ask. Mr. Gibbons, in response to Mr. Llewellyn's comments about pollinators and songbirds, is there the potential on the planting plan for some of the areas along that open ditch, whether it remains open now for a while and eventually is tiled or not, but incorporating some more native or pollinator friendly, beneficial pollinator plants along that area as part of the landscaping. I know that it's not typical because it usually is, more kind of wild and isn't as maintained as a typical development landscaping, but it might help some of the, I guess, just help promote activity of those pollinators and wildlife that is in that area. Is that something that you guys have talked about doing?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Simple, yes, definitely. I mean, we, typically try to keep our planting plans fairly simple, not knowing that where it may land, we'll go to construction documents, and certainly we can work in native plantings. If we tile the ditch, anything we do along them, we're gonna disturb the banks. We're gonna have to re-veg. We're gonna have to treat those raw edges anyways. So yeah, we'll work in some native plantings and some pollinators and what have you. So I'll reach out to the neighborhood association and make sure that we can kind of work together on that. We pledged to be good neighbors from the beginning. So
yeah. And that's what it seems like. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant from the committee? Great. Well, at this time, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the committee for discussion and consider a motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have a sense that we're sort of in lockstep here in terms of trying to keep this moving, and that people are kind of amenable to what it is. So I'll make a shot at a motion, understanding that it can be debated and somebody could add to it or throw it out. But I would move that we approve DRH 20-00099 with the conditions of approval in the staff report, and include one additional requirement that the applicant work with the DR staff to demonstrate a bus solution that's acceptable to ITD and the Boise School District.
Great. So moved. Is there a second? Is that you, Dana? Seconded by Dana. Okay, and now bring it to the committee for discussion on the motion. Yes, Dana.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to support this motion because I think that development really suits the neighborhood. It's the right scale, it's the right use, it's the right mix of urban and suburban for that area. I generally don't like to vote on things that I just hope change in the future, but I hope, and it looks like it's possible, that there will be sidewalk improvements throughout that whole area. So, I take children's safety very seriously and don't want to see anybody walk along a road that looks like that. But I do foresee some improvements coming in that area. And in the meantime, hopefully the school district and the developer and the neighborhood association can come to terms on how to keep children safe. And it sounds like now I'll just echo what everyone else has been saying, that it sounds like they're all trying to do that. And if they try, then they will come to some kind of solution to keep people safe. So I think this is the right kind of development.
Thank you. Other comments? If not, no. Motion's been, we have a motion and a second. No more discussion. So at this time, Josh, I'd have you call the roll.
Simple.
Aye.
Rudin.
Aye.
Marsh.
Aye.
Zuckerman.
Aye.
Talboy.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And this concludes our meeting tonight, and we will be adjourned. Good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.